Craig, the preparation that you put into your broadcast, how much do you pride yourself on that?
Well, eventually I think over time we kind of develop our own systems and shortcuts and things of that nature. But just in terms of the reading and the studying that you have to go into in preparing, I'd say it's anywhere from 6 to 8 hours of just the reading and the studying just on the teams involved, spread out over the course of the week. Now, helping the education of that, interviews you might have with the opposing team's head coach, the press conferences involved, visiting with the student athletes during the week, watching video, that all goes into that 8 hours. It's not just all reading game notes or reading media guides and things like that. It's all a part of that preparation that you have to do for a broadcast so that you know very much what you want to use. And it also, I think you've discovered this as well, Brant, you have to also accept in your mind that you're not going to use every single note that you make. If you do, you can just clutter and drown your broadcast. You're working with a crew. I have an outstanding analyst in Roger Wallace on football and Quan Cosby down on the sidelines. They have to have their opportunity to be able to say the things that they need to add from their own preparation. All of those things I think are very, very important. But it's not just about what you've read and what you're, spewing out, regurgitating on the air.
Mm-hmm. So you've called 2 national championship games in football. You've called several College World Series, including a championship in 2005. You've called a Final Four. All these big events. Does your approach to those differ at all from, say, a regular season game?
Well, I think the sports differ in how we do it. My first year of calling Texas sports was as the play-by-play voice. Came after doing as the analyst in the 2001 football season, transitioning into basketball play-by-play that year, 2001-02. And basketball went to the Sweet 16 that year, and then on into baseball. Baseball won national championship my first year doing the play-by-play in 2002. And the thing about baseball is when you get to Omaha in the College World Series, it's like this unfolding story over the course of a fortnight. It takes 2 weeks. So every day you're adding a little more to it, the notes and the prep, and you come back from the prior game, and then you might be seeing the team a second time that week or the next week in Omaha. So it's a completely different kind of preparation than, say, the next season, which was, you mentioned the Final Four for both the men and the women. I called 2 Final Four games within a 24-hour time span. The men were in New Orleans in the Louisiana Superdome, but you prepared for those basketball games as you had all season long. You would have approximately 2 games a week all the way through. And then, you had the 2 games in the Alamo Dome at the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 level, the regional semifinal, the regional final level. Then in New Orleans, they were going to have their Final Four game against Syracuse. And then after Texas had won its Sweet Elite 8 game over Michigan State, I got on the plane and went out to California and did the women's Elite 8 game at Stanford, because I do the women's play-by-play games that don't conflict with the men. That averages to about 24, 25 of their 30 regular season games a year. And then Roger Wallace usually backs me up on those 4 or 5 or 6 games that I have to miss on the women's side. And then the same thing rolls into baseball as well. So it was do the men's game, then as soon as it's over, hop in the car and an overnight drive from New Orleans to Atlanta, get a nap, and then get to the Georgia Dome and call the women's semifinal game against UConn. So it was a great experience. But the preparation for all of those is different than, say, the Rose Bowl, which happened, even the Rose Bowl game against Michigan, which wasn't for a national championship. That was a Rose Bowl. And then there was the Rose Bowl for the national championship against USC. And then, like you mentioned, the BCS national championship matchup with Alabama 4 years later. Now, those you prepared just like you were for any other football game. You just have a little longer prep time with the downtime in between the conference championship games and the national championship game in January. You have a little more prep time and more time to read some more notes and see some more news conferences and watch some more film and things like that.
Everybody wants to nail that big call, especially in a big game like that, like so many that you've called before, Craig. How do you go about making sure that call doesn't sound forced or over the top?
Well, I think it's a great point. And the first thing that I would say to anyone is we're all different in how we do it. I know for me, I know this. If I had planned to say any of the things I said on those national championships. If I had planned to say those things, I don't think I would have executed them nearly as well. In fact, I've told people I probably would have messed them up. One of the things that the folks at UT really enjoy is the call when they won the national championship in '02 in baseball. And I said, light the tower orange. The Texas Longhorns are college baseball's national champions. The way that thing even came about, I had no idea. I was asked in advance going into that day against South Carolina, what are you going to say when they win? I don't know. And I'd heard some of the greats say that. Vin Scully, Dick Enberg, a lot of the others say you cannot plan or should not plan for certain things. So I had nothing in my mind. We get to the ninth inning. Keith Moreland's working with me. He brings it out of the break, says the Longhorns are 3 outs away, and blah, blah, blah. And so then Keith runs down to the field. Now I'm calling, and again, it's really still hasn't gone through my mind what I'm going to say. South Carolina gets a lead runner on, and then they hit a ground ball back to Mount Houston Street's pitching for Texas and executes a quick turnaround 1-4-3 double play. Now all of a sudden there's 2 outs. And it hit me at that point, this game's about over. What are you gonna say? Mm-hmm. And the only thing that went through my mind was when Keith Moreland played on Texas 1975 national championship team, he mentioned remembering seeing the tower lit orange when they flew home. And it was like on the first or second pitch afterwards, and it just came out of me, like the tower orange. Mm-hmm. So that's what came from that. So if folks ask me, did you plan to say, no, if I'd planned to say that, I probably would have messed it up. We get to 05, again, I'm taking the same approach. I'm not going to plan to say anything. Tom Holliday was the pitching coach for Texas that year. He was not on the 02 staff. Frank Anderson was the pitching coach. Tom asked me that morning, of course, he'd been a former head coach at Oklahoma State, and he asked me that morning, hey, you going to say light the tower and win? I was like, no. What do you mean, no? I said, well, that was sad. I've got to say. He goes, you don't understand. He goes, my wife and I, our family, we remember when we were at Oklahoma State when you said light the tower orange, how big that was. You got to say it. I was like, really? Yeah. And then there were some other people that said something. I thought, well, I'm going to say it. It has to be organic with something else. And what came out was, for the 6th time in school history, you can light the tower orange, because I thought they won their 6th national championship. So it was that kind of thing. And then that fall when they won football, the last play of the game against USC, it wasn't over till it was over. Even after the Vince Young touchdown, USC got a nice kickoff, or after the kickoff, they got a screen pass to Reggie Bush, and they get up to midfield in that area beyond midfield. And so it was like, there's one play left. Mm-hmm. So I'm dialed in on calling the play, and Leinert's rolling right, and then it occurs to me, time's going to run out on this play. I say that, and he throws downfield. It's incomplete. The game's over. And then it just hit me because, again, it was something that Keith had said. He was my analyst on football then, that others had said as well. They've been waiting 35 years for this. And that's why I said 35 years in the waiting, 8 years in the building under Mack Brown. The Texas Longhorns are college football's national champions. That's what came out of the time because of what folks had said to me, not because of any planned thing that I had walking into the booth. Maybe that works for some people, and maybe scripting it out or having it planned, you have to do what's right for you. Same thing if you're preparing your broadcast charts or whatever. You prepare the best way. It helps you make it sound the best coming out of the box. Mm-hmm. But for me, I know if I tried to plan it, I probably would not have pulled it off very well.
I want to go back to something earlier in our conversation. You mentioned that the industry has evolved, but in a good way. What do you mean by that?
Well, and I'm glad you reminded me of that. Again, for folks who are saying, well, how could I, get the opportunity? There are opportunities today that exist that did not exist for you or I way on back. And I'm mainly speaking of online opportunities. The reality of it hit me in doing the Friday night high school show for Fox Southwest, High School Scoreboard Live. Being able to access what was going on for a 2A Division II program, a small town in West Texas, a tiny little school, but they had internet radio. They had their own internet broadcast. It might be to local guys, and it might not be the most textbook sounding broadcast, that sort of thing, but hey, it was a way to follow what was going on. So there are opportunities now for people in this business that did not exist back then. Also, My goodness. I mean, look at the, as my good friend and former broadcast partner and former Longhorn All-American Rod Babers likes to say, the sports industrial complex. Look at what the opportunities that it presents now with all of the many and varied sports networks that are out there. You know, when I was coming through, you basically had one. I mean, well, you had Fox Southwest along with ESPN in these parts. That was about it. Now you have so many different platforms, so many digital platforms, as well as the over-the-air platforms. Opportunities are out there if you're kind of looking for them, and you keep, you know, locked into and sniffing out those opportunities. They're there. It might not be exactly the one you want or where you want to start with, but you might have an opportunity to start with something and build from there.
You know, one of the things I've learned that's most important, and one of the more important things in working in this industry, is you have to have fun doing it, right? I mean, we're talking about sports. We're all getting a chance to do what we wanted to when we were kids. And so it's easy to get lost in, you know, wanting to get to point B or moving up the ladder or nailing that call. But along the way, you've got to enjoy it. What do you enjoy the most out of getting to do what you do?
I think it's working with the people. The coaches at the University of Texas are spectacular to work with. They're great, and the athletic department personnel. Same thing with the high school coaches working with. They're great people. Love working with the Texas High School Coach Association and with the UIL. Just wonderful people to work with. It makes the job easier, and if it's easier, then it becomes all the more enjoyable. Do I love getting in the booth on a Friday night or on a Saturday night for a Texas game or a Saturday afternoon for a Longhorn game? Absolutely. I love the opportunity to describe the action that's on the field or on the floor. Sure, there's no doubt about that. But it's the relationship that you build over the time with those people, with the student athletes, with the coaches, with the administrators. That makes it about as rewarding as just about anything else. It makes it all congeal into a wonderful professional experience. And that's why when I say to people, if you're getting into it for the money, you're getting into it for the wrong reason, because there was a long time where it was a struggle just even to make ends meet working at it. But I still enjoyed what I was doing because of the people and because of the games. And I found a lot of enjoyment. To answer your question, that's where I found a lot of the enjoyment. I wasn't finding riches at it by any stretch, but I was able to find a lot of enjoyment at it.
Craig, this was great, man. I really appreciate the transparency and the conversation with you. I always enjoy the conversations you and I have. I missed the fact that there were 2 baseball games supposed to be played between the Longhorns and Bobcats this year that we didn't get to meet up and trade these kind of stories in person at the Diamond. So, again, I appreciate you doing this, Craig. Be sure to, you know, stay safe, and we look forward to the next time the Bobcats and Longhorns meet.
Brad, it's my pleasure. I missed doing those games as well. It would have been a lot of fun, but I'm sure we'll run into each other again on down the road. Thanks a lot, and continued success to you as well.